close. So I turn now to Debra Bronstein and Miriam Bronstein, share reflections on their father's life.
Such a blessing to see all of you. Often in the months preceding his death, my dad would say, "Start the eulogy with Mom." And I would say, "Dad, it's your eulogy. Everybody's coming to hear about you." I would respond that again and again, and he would say that he was nothing without our mom, that she was so central to his life. So much of their lives were created together, both for our family, the youth in our congregation, and the entirety of the congregation. They were a pair engaged in doing creative, holy work for from their teens till the end of their lives. My brother and sister and I often talk about the Bronstein family Shabbat, which they created. I loved the whole pattern of the week leading up to Shabbat, cleaning the house on Thursday, cooking on Friday, Dad picking beautiful flowers to put on the table for Shabbat, setting the table in a shining, light-filled way, then singing the blessings together. One of my favorite parts of Shabbat was the moments that my mother covered her eyes as she lit the Shabbat candles. She then removed her hands from her eyes and said Shabbat Shalom and gave each of us a beautiful smile. I don't quite remember the order of our songs and blessings, but partway through, my dad would start to sing to my mom the very same classic words that the cantor just sang from Proverbs, Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. What I loved about it most was that he would sing the first two verses in a soulful, tuneful way, and then midway through, he would shift to a different register. And then she would pull him back to the correct register. Though it was a song meant for him to sing to her, the two of them would sing together. We've all, my sister and my brother, created different Shabbat, different Jewish lives, but I'm sure that Bronstein Shabbatot, which came from our parents, formed each of us into the Jews we are today. Our dad cared a lot about justice and injustice, compassion and lack of compassion. This seeped into the rest of us. Some of these qualities came from his reading and his love of the prophets, Isaiah, Amos, Micah, Jeremiah, and all. He was a prophetic Reform rabbi of his generation. From the March on Washington, which our father participated in, which was an event that Rabbi Joshua Abraham Heschel called praying with his feet, to his justice-filled sermons and community activism, he was a prophetic rabbi. But in addition, some of his sense of justice was personal. I have a vivid childhood memory that goes back to our first home and congregation in Rochester, New York. Behind Temple Brith Kodesh was a bird-filled marsh. My dad and I often walked back there early in the mornings. It was such an alive place. Among the various grasses, rushes, water plants, and cattails flew red-winged blackbirds, calling their raucous cry. One morning, as we walked out toward the marsh, I looked down and I saw a plant that looked different than all the rest, because the middle of its stem was swollen. "What's that?" I said to my dad. "That's a gall." "What's a gall?" I asked with some distress. "Is it hurting the plant?" "No, I don't think it makes the plant hurt," he said kindly. "I think it just makes the plant look different. Sometimes insects lay eggs in plants, and this is what we see." This did not calm me at all. Why should this particular plant suffer from a gall? "But why, Dad, is this plant hurting? Why do some plants have galls and others don't? It looks like the plant is sick. Why would God let it be that way?" "Deb," said my father, "I don't know. All I know is that God doesn't choose for some plants to have galls and others not, just like God doesn't cause some people to get sick and others to be well." I'm missing a page. And he continued, "I don't know why people suffer more and others suffer less, just that some suffering comes to everybody. What I do know is that it is our job to be with each other and helping each other in their times of suffering." So much of what I know as a rabbi today emerged from that conversation. Much of who our father was emerged from his childhood and teen experiences, attending different shuls and Habonim camp, a wonderful Jewish camp. He translated these early childhood experiences into a spirituality for us all. He's best known for the Reform movement's Haggadah, first published in the early 70s. I wonder how many people he touched by sharing his own deep religiosity with his generation and my generation. Every once in a while, I'm reading from the Siddur or the Haftarah, and I can almost hear our Father's voice pronouncing the words. I hope this continues throughout my life.
Thank you all for being here as we remember and mourn my father, both on the live stream and in this beautiful sanctuary where he spent so many hours with his beloved congregational family. There's so many things I could say about my father. He was a man of great heart, soul, and intellect. A leader, a rabbi, a teacher, a family man, a person who loved strongly and cared about justice, a multifaceted and complex human being. His impact on me has been so enormous that it is almost unimaginable for me to consider my life without his presence. I feel an overflowing sense of gratitude for the ways he, along with my mother of blessed memory, taught me how to live in this world. I want to share some of what I learned from my father, honoring him as my teacher. Beginning in earliest childhood, my father awakened our sensibilities to the reality of the sacred and to how holiness could be found in many aspects of life. Each week, my parents ushered in the holiness and harmony of Shabbat with their loving, shining countenances and with joyful singing and prayer. On many walks through the woods and elsewhere, my father opened my senses to the miraculous wonder of nature, suffused with vitality and godliness. He felt it was really important to be outside as much as possible and to always be appreciative. He loved birds and flowers, the trees, and the mountains. My father showed me that beauty was an important and guiding force in human life. He was deeply moved by great works of literature, poetry, and music, and cried freely when touched by these things. He often insisted on reading poetry aloud at the dinner table. He took us to Shakespeare festivals, and he wrote his own poetry for loved ones and as a liturgist. I have a memory of being with him in an art museum once as a child, where he showed me the great Van Gogh painting, The Potato Eaters, alerting me to the pathos it depicted with its implicit call for greater justice. All too often, I witnessed in my father the visceral sense of grief and indignation he felt when he encountered injustice. He wanted to do good in the world. He wanted to serve. He modeled how a Jew and a humanist has a sacred duty to act on behalf of the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, the oppressed and the powerless. My father's intelligence and love of learning has been an abiding source of inspiration to me. He shared big ideas with us. Conversations with him on many subjects had an excitement, depth, and richness to them. And since my teen years, our shared love of religious studies especially animated our conversations. He cherished his friends, both old and new. He rejoiced in participating in and building community. This too was sacred. His own formative experience as a teen in the Habonim movement convinced him of the almost alchemical, transformative power of belonging to a group of people joined by a sense of purpose. My father deeply loved his family. Even long after they were gone, he never stopped speaking of his own parents with love and respect. He adored my mother. Her companionship and partnership were everything to him. He was an involved and active father. And he delighted in connecting with his grandchildren as unique individuals and providing them with happy and vivid experiences. There's no way to summarize the global way in which my father, along with my mother, imparted a love of Judaism to me. How special and important I felt as a young child when my father taught me to read Hebrew. How connected I felt when we studied Torah together, when we sang Nigunim together, when we said Havdalah or sat together at the Seder. My father and mother gave me and my siblings the precious and eternal gift of identity and belonging to an ancient and ever-evolving people, a people who strive, however imperfectly, to live in good ways. I feel called, even in this time of heartbreaking grief, to utter these words. Ashreinu matov chalkenu, uma naim goralenu, uma yafa Yerushatenu. How happy and blessed I am in my portion, and how pleasant is my lot, and how beautiful is my inheritance. Thank you, Dad. Your memory will always be a blessing.